All right. Now, give us your best Gabriel voice.
Okay. Energy Master, your desire is what I'm after. Energy Master, your desire is what I'm after.
In the early 80s, after his Tucson ministry shut down, Gabriel moved back to Pittsburgh. It was there that he recorded his first album, Unicorn Love. This was clearly meant to be his major statement. The lyrics are full of heartbreak, dark nights of the soul, and the evils of life in modern America. Unicorn Love is a bizarre artifact. The cover features no less than 5 pictures of Gabriel. In the largest of these, he sits on a stool, his hands on his knees, wearing a white dress shirt, black slacks, and a red New Wave skinny tie. He stares thoughtfully into space, surrounded by plush toy unicorns. This larger, central portrait is surrounded by 4 smaller ones, each of which feature Gabriel posing with a different glamour model. The sound of the album is defined by tinny keyboards and drum machines, above which Gabriel's plaintive whine struggles to stay in tune while delivering lyrics that equally pine for lost love and castigate a sick, fallen world. Soon after completing the album, he moved to Los Angeles to take on the entertainment industry. Frida Frendenia is a Urantia book reader and master gardener who lives in Oregon. In the late 1980s, she was in Los Angeles, where she knew Gabriel. At the time, he still went by the name Tony.
When I first met him, it seemed as if, and if I'm recalling this correctly, he had just recently read the Urantia book for the first time and seemed to have a real struggle with fitting in with the rest of the readers. He had kind of a sense of self-importance that showed up early in the community.
Did you ever have an opportunity to see him play or hear his music at that time?
I did once at a gathering. He had requested and was given about 20 minutes to, sing one of his songs, and I was unimpressed. They basically unplugged him.
Oh, wow.
According to Frida, this wasn't the only time Gabriel made a fool of himself in the Urantia book community.
There was a conference in Arizona in 1988, and Tony attended that conference. He was in a small breakout plenary with me, and it was there that Tony proposed a not-for-profit or a organization that he would be the spearhead of that would be like an evangelical core. The leader of that breakout several times said to Tony, we're not talking about building organizations. And he got extraordinarily frustrated and kind of stormed out of the room.
Isn't the whole idea of kind of an evangelical Urantia organization kind of antithetical to like the way Urantia study groups and stuff operate?
Makes it very clear that all human beings have the same access to spiritual ideals and energy.
Yeah.
There is no elite people on this planet. Tony showed an inclination to want to exalt himself, even that early on. I think there was some self-delusion going on even at that time.
Gabriel's time in Hollywood was both demeaning and eye-opening. He worked dead-end jobs to survive, and his music was met with utter indifference. Meanwhile, he claimed that radio stations and recording artists, including Sting, were stealing his ideas. At one point, Gabriel claims he was offered a recording contract with a $100,000 advance, but he had to remove the spiritual content from his lyrics. In his memoir, The Divine New Order, Gabriel recalls his response.
I truly appreciate your company's offer, but the world doesn't need another John Lennon or Elvis Presley. They really did nothing to uplift our troubled planet or bring about any real spiritual change. The world needs a Gabriel, and with God's help, and in his time, that's what the world will get.
The record company exec, if he ever existed, must have thought that Gabriel was absolutely nuts, and he was just getting warmed up.
Sir, a divine and new order is coming upon this planet. A just order, you might say, where all dreams come true if they include the common good of your fellow brothers and sisters. One day, you will hear my music being played around this planet on all the radio stations and television networks, where they will be owned by the administration of a just system and operated by people with concern for our planet and the people on it. Goodbye.
Just as he had in Tucson, Gabriel was intent on starting a religious organization in California, with himself at the top. But things weren't really working out. That isn't to say that he didn't gain anything from his stay in Los Angeles. When he wasn't attending Urantia book events, Gabriel sought out as many New Age groups as he could work into his schedule. He learned about Atlantis and Karma, tarot cards and Reiki energy. He also had his first experience with channelers, people who claimed to speak for spirits and other entities. Eventually, Gabriel's Hollywood adventure came to an end. In The Divine New Order, Gabriel writes that he met an attractive older woman while working at a shoe store in Beverly Hills. The woman seduced him and then scammed him into covering the down payment on her new apartment.
She was the final blow to me in California, and I had no energy left to fight the Hollywood greed machine. My heart and mind turned to Arizona.
Gabriel says that he first made contact with a celestial being named Paladin soon after returning to Arizona. I asked Gabriel's daughter, Sanskrita, about this character.
Paladin, the entity, is very bawdy and makes a lot of sexual jokes, and then kind of like tells and talks a lot about sex and tries to like tell people that because he was mortal and human, he can identify with us humans. And his biggest thing is like that our sexual nature is bad, basically, but it can be used obviously to procreate, but there's so much lust in humans, and he's like, oh, I was lustful, I had every woman I could for all these centuries, and I chased all the beautiful women, and that's how Paladin was. And you know, my dad's whole mouth would change for like hours even, and it was believable. I truly believed an entity was speaking through him because his whole character changed, his voice changed, his mouth changed. For hours he could maintain this. And I feel like he possibly, if this isn't channeling of any kind and that doesn't exist, is just doing some kind of method acting. I don't know.
I also asked an ex-member named Jackie what she thought about Paladin.
That is a good question. What is Paladin? I highly doubt if Tony is smart enough to make all this stuff up like on the fly, which he would have to have been doing, because when he's just talking as himself, he's just kind of rambling. Like I told you, I used to transcribe his Sunday services, and then I'd have to like edit them to try to make them make sense. Like he goes off on tangents. He mostly just talks about himself and how great he is, or his life and all the great coincidences, and how he was baptized at St. Peter's Church. Isn't that a great coincidence? You know, it's like, I was St. Peter because I was baptized at the church. It's like, Okay, we heard that like 55 times, like not that great a coincidence. There's St. Peter's churches everywhere, you know? Like it's not that big a deal. I believe that there's a dark force operating there, but that's just my belief. Like I can't prove that, and I don't know what dark forces are capable of doing, you know?
In 2015, as soon as he left the group, Laird Scott took to the internet looking to explain what he had just been through. In the following, he refers to Gabriel's philosophy as the continuing fifth epical revelation, or CFER.
All right, so sitting in my little recovering time, kind of floating, not knowing what the heck just happened, and not quite reassimilated into life. I had a lot of time on my hands to research, and I knew, you know, the three things it came down to was what Paladin and CFER are either Gabriel's making it up, it's a fallen being, or it's psychotronic mind control. And as I discovered and researched the psychotronic mind control, it started to, you know, just bells would go off and this and that, and their capabilities would parallel exactly what CFER was saying, some of their terms.
Why would the intelligence agencies or the government care about the Urantia book or the Urantia community? Why would they want to infiltrate it?
Well, back in MK Ultra days, they were doing psychological experiments and drug-induced experiments on unwitting people. And things got so sophisticated, and they mapped out people's brains, and they learned how the brains function to where they could control it and manipulate it remotely. And throughout the 60s and 70s, I believe those alien abduction stories are all these government programs, and they were just using it to experiment their technology more than any specific plan.
Is the GCCA a government mind control operation?
I believe so, totally, through Gabriel's brain. And if you researched remote neural monitoring / manipulating, it has all the features of it.
Dwayne Alpha was a brigadier general when he retired from the Marine Corps in the early 1970s. He was also a well-known and well-loved member of the Urantia community until his death in 2008. The fact that he was a high-ranking member of the military has led to rumors that he was part of a conspiracy involving the Urantia movement and the U.S. government. As unlikely as that sounds, for a time the American military did have an interest in the Urantia book. This is according to Frida Frendentia.
Okay, so Jim Shannon, who passed away 2 years ago now, was a military intelligence officer who was tasked in the 1970s, early 80s, to do an Operation New Age or something similar to that name. And Jim Shannon visited and hung out and stayed around the Urantia book movement in the Los Angeles area for about 4 years. And during that time, he was employed by the U.S. government as an intelligence officer. He was visiting all of the then sprouting up New Age movements. Scientology, the Urantia book, the Self-Realization Fellowship. I mean, Jim was there, and he was on purpose about finding out what they know. I know he went to Esalen and spent several months there. And Jim's report back to the U.S. government became a document known as First Earth Battalion.
Yes.
Okay, you're familiar with that?
Yeah, I am. I was wondering if you were going to bring that up. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
The 1st Earth Battalion Operations Manual is a product of the strange love affair that the Pentagon had with the New Age movement beginning in the 1970s. In The Men Who Stare at Goats, author John Ronson describes the manual as a mixture of drawings and graphs and maps and polemical essays and point-by-point redesigns of every aspect of military life. Like so many of his generation, Lieutenant Colonel Jim Shannon seems to have returned home from Vietnam desperate to transcend the trauma of the war. At the same time, he still clearly believed in the military as an institution. And his book promotes a kind of hippie imperialism, where whatever the United States military does is okay, so long as it's done by yogi warrior monks armed with dowsing rods. Just as the 1st Earth Battalion concept gave American imperialism a New Age makeover, Gabriel and his elders at the GCCA seem to have created an organization that uses New Age aesthetics to obscure what is, in reality, a harsh authoritarian regime. After I press this button. Just give me, what's your name? How old are you? What do you do for a living?
Okay, my name is Josh Lilly. I'm 40 years old, and I am a builder of sorts. And I lived in a cult.
How did you end up in the Aquarian Concepts community?
My parents studied a book called the Urantia book, and when I was about 12, they received some type of correspondence from the community, or Gabriel, stating that we were basically in apocalyptic times, and that they needed to get to Sedona, Arizona immediately. And so we lived in Hawaii in the winters, and we had a hunting cabin in Wyoming that we stayed in the summers, so kind of best of both worlds. And they immediately gave it all up and packed up and moved us to Sedona, Arizona. I had never been, exposed to the metaphysical or New Age movement on any level, or really religion either. So got there, and, at age 12, I pretty much felt it was a cult. And I was quite outspoken about my disdain for Gabriel and the community. So they bought me a one-way ticket to Hawaii, and 15 years old, got on that plane and said adios.
Suddenly homeless, Joshua spent his teenage years moving around the country, from Hawaii to Colorado to Wyoming, before getting married and settling down in his 20s.
And the whole while, my family and the community sending me letters and correspondence saying, this is the end times, and, you need to get here. And, so there was always a heaviness behind that, guilt, and like should be with my family. And, it'd been about 12 years that I'd been away from them. And I convinced my wife at the time to do it. And, she was very adverse to it. She said, this is a cult, and I do not want to go there. And I said, well, we're going.
And then what was it like re-entering the community as an adult?
The community, they have a good PR program. I think the majority of them are honest people seeking truth that, they have good motives. And I think Gabriel has found a way to manipulate these people for his own gain. And it's really too bad, because the majority of these people, they can't just be themselves, They can't just experience life through their own lens. It's got to be through Gabriel's lens.
So, part of his shtick is that he's, got this hotline to, stuff about you from past lives and other universes and stuff. And
exactly. He calls it the PAPCW, the Planetary Absolute Paradise Circuit Wave. What he does is basically, he doesn't claim to channel. He says that he's an audio fusion material complement. And basically what this is a radio for what he calls as over-control, which is the hierarchy of the administration of God's kingdom. So if you look at it on the level that God made creation, and he needs to basically run this organization now. So he has subservience that orchestrate his will. And so this is brought down to a human level, and Gabriel is the chosen person on this planet to basically orchestrate God's divine government.
And who are your parents in the community?
My father was an elder in the community, which is basically 3 steps down from Gabriel. He was an elder for, I want to say, 12, 13 years, until basically he pissed off Gabriel, and Gabriel made him a student at that point. And that's the lowest. So he went from, a founder of the community, an elder in the community, to basically nothing.
How did he piss off Gabriel?
I'm not sure if I'm ready to share that yet.
And what's your mom do?
So my mother is the head accountant for the community, head financial advisor for the community. She is basically the brains behind the operation.
Our undercover video is hard to see here, just burning candles in a dark room. But that high-pitched voice you hear coming out of Gabriel's mouth is, according to Gabriel, the voice of the bright and morning star, a perfect alien being, one of the rulers of the universe. And the first thing that the perfect being does is praise Gabriel's music.
Gabriel's cosmic pop is cosmo pop because it is universally popular.
Then the alien sings one of Gabriel's songs.
The seeds of flight from the world.
Finally, everyone in the room joins in, chanting the words stabilization for 20 minutes.
When Paladin, or another cosmic entity, speaks through Gabriel, this phenomenon is referred to as a transmission. Joshua received his transmission on March 28, 2006. Totaling just over 1 printed page, it covers a lot of ground. In addition to changing his name, it states that he has lackluster spiritual development, but promises that if he works hard, he may have a future leadership role in the group.
When men see you, you must not be ashamed that they also see God. They have not yet discovered who you truly are. You should identify more with being a son of Paladin of Torah, for this is your genetics. You could easily be mandated as a vicegerent second assistant within 2 years if you apply yourself to serious study and the higher acquisition of the understanding of procedure and the need for it.
Gabriel believes in past lives, and what he does is this is kind of like a channeling in effect that he will tell you about your past lives and, past acquaintances that you've had, or who your original parents are, so he might say that your parents in this life are not actually your parents, they just are in this life, but when you first existed, you had another set of parents.
Although Josh and Joshua indeed are names of cosmic origin, being named after the Creator Son Jesus, also spelled Yeshua, your first cosmic name will be named after myself, Paladin. For you are a Paladin Van. Your cosmic father, Kaimon, for you are a first light soul, is also a Paladin Van. Your name will mean willing to obey, but not necessarily to understand. Obedience is the action of honor. In your honor to Talius Van, you will become a Vanmon. So you're named after both Talius Van and K. Mon.
Gabriel picks a name that he wants you to have, and he gives a meaning for it. Like my name was Van Mon, and Gabriel's name is Talius Van. And this is a character from the Revelation that they study, the Urantia book. And so he basically named me after himself. And he did this basically saying that I'm part of his lineage throughout the Renaissance of time. And my name means, and this is classic, it means willing to serve without the need for understanding. This is the exact opposite of what I am. I need to understand. I need to know what the hell you're talking about, and if you can't articulate it to me on a conscious level, go fuck yourself, you know? And so Gabriel did this to me, you know, I think basically to break me down. You know, he wanted me to submit. And come to find out, I'm not one to submit.
Earlier in this series, we talked about the chip game, a means of controlling behavior and keeping track of community members' actions. Another one of Gabriel's behavior modification techniques is something called the Personality Integration Rehabilitation Program, also known as PIRP. Joshua entered the program after an incident involving members of the construction crew he oversaw. He told me about it on the phone recently.
I was building one of the houses, and I had the Mexican crew there, and this migrant came on the job, like an illegal alien. And I didn't see him, and the guys saw him before I did, and they went and put him in a car. One of the cars parked there. And I was walking around, and I saw him, and I was like, I knew immediately that he was a migrant. And I was like, he's got to fucking go, you guys. And so one of the guys was like, all right, I'll take him out of here. And I was like, all right, well, get him out of here. He can't be on this property. And when the guy was driving out with him, Day was driving in, and she saw him. And I got called immediately, you know, and brought into a counseling session immediately. And I think I got an infraction for it. And they asked me, they said, you know, if this came up again, would you do the same thing? I was like, fuck yeah, I'd do the same thing. You know, what the fuck? Like, the guy was all fucked up. He could barely walk, dude. Like, he had, like, fucking bottles tied to his feet, dude. And, like, his feet were bleeding. You know, he was fucking starving, dehydrated and shit. And, you know, my Mexican crew, they had compassion for him. They wanted to take care of him. Like, hey, you know, we're supposed to be a ministry here. We're supposed to be helping people. Arlen would have called the Border Patrol. That guy would have got deported. And I don't give a fuck how spiritual you think you are. That's fucking evil.
Upon being placed in PIRP, Joshua received a customized 21-point rehabilitation program that centered around daily classes, constant supervision, written assignments, and multiple daily meetings with something called a soul watcher.
And in this program, it basically said that I wasn't allowed to be alone with my children, and that I had to have, like, supervised visitations from someone that's like a minister in the community. And so basically, like, I'm still married at the time, and, you know, they had the kids basically kind of live with her on the same property, and they put me, like, out in this old, like, Airstream trailer out in the desert with no running water. And so I was really frustrated at this time, you know, not being able to see my kids. Like, you know, that's like being treated like a criminal or something, you know. And at this point, I had donated half of my life to their charity. And I felt that was a real slap in the face to be told I wasn't allowed to be alone with my children. And not only my children, but my mother as well, who's there, Centria, was not allowed to be around her alone. I couldn't email her, couldn't call her. Basically, I couldn't have any communication with her unless it was supervised. And so those were all things that were really weighing heavy on me at this point in time. And so basically, I just started questioning, and I got mad. I got upset with them, and I said, "This is you're taking my kid away from me. My work environment is insane, and I'm sitting here, building these mansions for Gabriel. What is this?" And so at that point, they gave me the boot. They kicked me out, and it made me homeless at that point.
At the time, Joshua had 2 sons living in the community. Makelin was 6 years old, and Klessin was almost 2 years old. 5 months later, on December 26, 2016, Joshua received a call telling him that his youngest son was dead. The cause of death was later determined to be sudden infant death syndrome.
So basically, I was told that my son died because of my lack of faith in Gabriel. And, I tossed that around in my mind for quite a while. That was a pretty tough thing to navigate, for sure. And it's crystallized in my mind now that I had nothing to do with my child's death. But I do have some reservations that, I was physically removed from my children. Physically removed. And at a time in my child's life when, we were very attached. I was very bonded with this child. And for all I know, he could have died of a broken heart.
In 2017, Joshua was drawn into a bitter custody battle with his ex-wife over their remaining son. Currently, he has partial custody of the child.
I don't hold my ex-wife responsible in any respect or any aspect. She is controlled by Gabriel without any doubt. And so every court case that I have been to, every mediation, I fully believe that it is a direct result of Gabriel trying to spite me and, frankly, fuck you. I lost a child, I lost my entire family, I lost a wife, and this son of a bitch, with no empathy for any other human beings and what they've been through, has tried to take my child from me when he's already taken my mother, my brother, my sister, and basically every other blood relation that I have. And he, even in my absence, is trying to take my other child, even after he knows I've lost a child through death.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The So-Called Prophet from Pittsburgh. If you want to support the show, please rate and comment on iTunes. And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram @PGHProphet. And be sure to like The So-Called Prophet from Pittsburgh on Facebook. This episode was written, recorded, and edited by me, Joseph L. Flatley. Special thanks to Matthew Schultz, who played Gabriel and Paladin in this episode.